Hello, guten Tag. My name is Andrew Bryan, and I'm a musician. I come from New York, and I'm living in Hamburg now for a long time. And I'd like to show you my music studio in this wonderful house where I do teaching, songwriting, producing, and all sorts of good things in the music Bereich, auf Deutsch. And with little or no further to do, let's take a walk inside where I can show you what's going on. So come on with me. Thanks. Hello. I'd like to welcome you to my tour of my studio. But first, I want to give you a little bit of details about what I do and what I'm about and what I can offer you. So, maybe historically speaking, I can go into the past a little bit and tell you how everything developed in my music career that brought me to where I am today. When I was young, little boy, maybe around 4 or 5 years old, my parents, who were always playing classical music in their house, exposed me to this wonderful music, and that was really my basis of my interest in music from the beginning. Although today I'm a pop musician, including jazz and different areas of popular music, my basis is really that of classical music. And when I was about 7 years old, I started taking classical piano lessons for about 10 years with 2 teachers, one of them being an American and the other one being a German guy. And I also later taught in the German man's camp, which was a music, arts, and science camp in Lake Placid. And I taught there drums and e-bass when I was about 14, 15, 16 years old. So that was my first experience with teaching. Anyway, getting back to my point, I studied classical piano for 10 years, and when I was about 11 years old, I really wanted to play the drums because this instrument really turned me on, okay? Now, I don't know how many drummers out there are watching this video right now, but as you can imagine, when a young guy sees drums in an orchestra playing and watches these guys get ready and the thunder starts happening in a symphony, then that's a really exciting thing for a guy like me, okay? So when I was 11 years old, I got permission from my uncle, who was a very well-known jazz drummer at that time. He made about 250 records, some of them with Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, and all the great bebop jazz musicians of that time. He still had a drum set left in America, in Brooklyn, in the basement of my uncle's house. So I used to go over there on every Sunday and get busy with the drums. And that was really a great experience for me because it really fulfilled my need that I felt sitting in Carnegie Hall watching those guys get ready and freaking out with the drums and stuff and the big basses, okay? But there was a little snafu because when I attempted to bring those drums to Manhattan to my parents' house, my father saw the drums and he said, "No way, Jose, for these drums to be played in his house." So I was like really frustrated, you know, because getting drums from Brooklyn to Manhattan, that was already a drag, okay? And then I couldn't play them. Later, my mother let me play them when my father was not at home. But in the meantime, I was like really frustrated. I didn't know what to do. And I went down to the music store. And then in the window, I saw like this great Fender bass. And like I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the shape of it and the strings and everything. It like really turned me on totally. So I saved up my money and brought this Fender bass. And then sat with records for years, literally for years. Sat with my record player, put the needle on the record, and listened to Chicago Transit Authority or the Allman Brothers or anything I could get my hands on that I really liked and wanted to learn and wanted to play. And I taught myself by ear the bass. So that was the first thing. Also with the drums. But that wasn't enough for me because I realized to study these instruments and also to study singing, because I was singing already with Smokey Robinson and the Miracles and the Four Tops and all the Motown things that were really happening in America at that time. I realized that I needed some help with these instruments and singing and studying in the school and stuff. So I went and got that help. And luckily enough, after the piano, I ran into some really wonderful jazz musicians who brought me up to speed with all of the technical issues for the instruments, and also great wisdom from singers on how to sing well and effectively using good technique. These things I developed throughout several years working with different teachers, such as Tony Williams on the drums, Jerry Jamot on the bass, Richard Davis on the bass. I made some drum duos with my uncle Art Taylor. I worked with another great musician who was working with Dave Brubeck's son's band named Robert Leon, and also played in his band. And he taught me a lot on the bass, and he also knew a lot about rhythm. And I worked with some other guys who were coming out of Manhattan School of Music, and they taught me a great deal, as well as doing my coursework in the school for music courses, and really getting a big scope of what's necessary to be a professional musician. So, after all of this learning experience, I naturally, throughout that time, was playing in groups and took all of that experience and made a decision to become a music teacher and to have a recording studio and also to perform regularly. And all those things I've done and have been doing. And that is more or less my experience as a musician. Now, the details of what I do are in videos that follow this one, having to do exactly with singing, drums, electric bass, or studio work. And the studio work theme that involves production, songwriting and arranging, and music theory is combined into that as well. So I think if you take a look at some of these videos at least, if not all of them, you'll start to get really a good idea of what I can offer you as a musician or as a music teacher. And I hope that I answer most of the questions that might be in your mind to cause you to even look at this video in the first place, because frustration in music is really a drag. So I hope that I hit on all of the important nerves and parts that will really help you to feel something about this and to maybe phone up and let me know what you want to do, and for us to meet and get some things going, okay? One last thing I'd like to say before I begin with the specific fields of drums, bass, and singing is that working as a music teacher, my fundamental interest is that people grow and that people learn. I don't like to hold on to students who just come here and do the same thing over and over again and don't go anywhere, because that doesn't give me satisfaction. And with the great training I've had from professional musicians and seeing what's necessary to be a great musician, that doesn't give me a good feeling when I'm not helping someone. Okay, so I just wanted to clear that up now, that if you come here, although we can have fun and laugh a lot and talk about even different things outside of music, although I feel everything is connected to music somehow or another, the other side of it is that we're going to really be learning a great deal of technique, because technique is the vehicle to help you to get out your talent and to get out your ideas. So, I think I said enough now in my intro here, and let's move on and go into the individual categories.